What's wrong with robotics automation these days? My guest today is Kim Losi. She is Chief Growth Officer of Rapid Robotics. Hello, Kim.
Hi, good morning.
Thanks for joining me for this. So, what are you hearing right now out there in the world of customers and companies about their needs with regard to automation and more specifically robotics?
So, the customers that we're talking to, we started really doing a lot of work in manufacturing and evolved over time to really supply chain and logistics. And what we're hearing is that, customers know that they need to automate. I mean, of course, everybody knows the labor shortage is a challenge. It's getting increasingly worse. Mm-hmm. I think the universal truth is that nobody has enough resources. So we need to find a new way to be successful. So a lot of people are looking at robotics and they just don't know where to start. Or specifically, there are these challenges around picking. There are different areas of robotics where we're seeing innovation. And picking in particular has been a challenge. How do I put things in boxes, right? The thing that we also know is that customers, what they're best at doing is changing their minds. So as manufacturers and producers, we really need to think about how do we anticipate those changes and make sure that we're building solutions that are adaptable to be able to achieve those, whatever it is, the whim of the moment.
Well, let's be fair. One of the favorite things of automation is change also.
Right.
Is innovation, and it never stands still. And so customers, I can understand their pain as they see, well, wait a minute, now a robot is something completely different from what it used to be.
Right.
And so how can they know what they want? Because, the technology is like outpacing them.
Yes.
In a way. So what is the conception of a robot today versus what it was years ago? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think one of the, as we see the labor rate or the labor force continuing to shrink, and we see the deployment of robotics or the sale of robots has been increasing, but the rate at which they're actually being deployed is not increasing at the same pace.
Oh, now why is that, do you?
I think that robotics have always been challenging. It's expensive. It's an expensive capital, equipment is expensive. I think that it doesn't necessarily have a lot of flexibility, and it takes a long time to program them. So there's sort of these legacy ways that we do things in this modern world, and they're not really working in tandem.
Yeah, and the idea is you just don't bring in robots and kick out the people.
Right.
You still need the people there, number one, to work with the robots side by side, and also to, maintain, I guess, and oversee the robots. So people understand that they're still going to need people when they bring in the robots.
Right. We've actually seen a lot of growth in companies. I mean, I think it's that sort of thing that we always think about, robots taking people's jobs. We have, I would say, 90% of the time that happens, and then companies are actually growing. In the United States in particular, a lot of customers that will bring in robotics are then able to quote new jobs at a lower price and bring business back from overseas, which is really interesting.
Yeah, is it interesting too? I don't understand how customers can decide what it is they actually want to automate.
Right.
Like, do I want a robot that's going to do the actual picking?
Right.
Or do I want a robot that's going to bring something to the pick face, or I'll do the picking and put it on the robot, and the robot goes off to, some conveyor.
Right.
So how do you even make that determination as to what you want your robots to do?
Yeah, well, I think that it's really important to think about, think about your business today, but think about where your business is going and the kind of flexibility that you really need. And so I think that maybe that's the best way to kind of start. I always recommend to people, you just need to get started. Even if it's not perfect, the right solution, dip your toe in the water and get started. And then you start to see what are the challenges, what are the pitfalls, what are the opportunities that creates. So you don't need to jump in the deep end from the beginning. But there are customers that are, further along in that automation journey. So then they jump in, and I think there it's important to look at the evolution of the technology. How is, picking, for example, has always been very challenging. It's hard for a robot to know, robots are programmed to do one thing.
Right.
But now what I'm seeing is the evolution of vision systems and the advancements in generative artificial intelligence and things like that are making robots more adaptable than they've ever been before. So you can really think about a robot that can have almost the instincts of a human. If it can identify exactly what that thing is that it's seeing, and then it behaves accordingly, that sort of capability didn't exist really 10 years ago, certainly, and then it's been slowly evolving from there.
Be careful when you start using words like instincts for robots.
Yeah.
Dangerous territory at that point. So what do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that people make with regard to automation and robotics these days?
I think that, I always go into a lot of customer sites and I'll ask, what have been tell me about where you've got robots, where have you had robots, what has been successful, what has not. And so many times they're like, let me show you. And they walk me out to the parking lot and I see what I call the robot graveyard.
Oh no. Oh, no.
And I say, what happened? And they said, well, we brought this robot in, it was doing palletizing, it was running these 2 lines, it worked for 6 months and then it just didn't work. And I'll say, well, what happened? Well, the corporate champion of this project, they left, nobody knew how to run it, and it's a big expense. And so I think, it's really important as you're thinking about bringing in robots to think about that relationship with your provider, whether it's a systems integrator or a company directly, whatever it is, that you need to have the support that you need now and in the future, and not just, my perspective on it is that you really want to think about that partner being an extension of your team, not just somebody who's going to come, deliver, install, and be available if there's a major catastrophe. You need that sort of day-to-day.
Someone who can say this robot is good for this, and let you know in advance, and not let you find out the wrong way.
Yeah, I think also the as cloud connected as everything is today, those your support people, the companies you're working with should be able to keep an eye on that robot and say, this data, like something is off. There's an anomaly here in the data. Something might be going on. Let's look into it proactively rather than when something's down.
Yeah. It does sound, though, Kim, like really most of these warehouses have no choice but to advance and adopt some degree of robotics and automation in their warehouses. It just seems like that's absolutely essential today. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think, even in markets where there's been a lot of no problem with labor shortage, they're also facing labor shortages. I think inflation is another thing that's really driving, costs up, and we've got to be able to find ways to keep that down.
Right.
I think it help businesses, maintain the profit goals that they have.
Well, thank you, Kim, so much for helping us to understand what's right and wrong about automation today and how companies can address it from a constructive and workable way. I appreciate your insights on that. I do want to take a moment to ask you about rapid robotics specifically. Where do you guys play in this whole space?
Yeah, so, rapid robotics, we started in 2019 with a focus in the manufacturing space. We've then started to work more and more with food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, and electronics companies, moving into sort of warehousing and some of the logistics. And we really are focused on what we think about as total solutions. So hardware, software, and service and support. So it really is a full service offering, and we do like to say to customers, we're here to help you grow and want to do it successfully. And we do have a subscription model. And so if you're not successful, we're not successful.
Kim, thank you once again. I really appreciate this conversation and your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Kim Losi of Rapid Robotics. Thank you very much for watching.